This presentation is on bone remodeling, and we'll go over the purpose of this process, the anatomy involved in this process, and further expand on the skeletal system which is involved in the process, and we'll also focus on the two main elements of osteoclast and osteoblast, which are the two main cells involved. This project was done by me, Matthew, Ben, and Kevin. The purpose of bone remodeling is to remove old and damaged bone and to replace it with new bone. This process also helps shape the skeleton during growth. The process of bone remodeling is also affected by infections, antibodies, hormones, and nutrition.
The next topic of bone remodeling will be anatomy. In bone remodeling, the primary organ that is involved is the skeleton. The purpose of bone remodeling is to adjust the skeleton to fit things such as our growth and hormonal changes in the body. As such, when our body goes through these changes, bone remodeling is done to adjust such changes. Bone remodeling, also known as bone metabolism, is a lifelong process where mature bone tissue is removed from the skeleton and new bone tissue is formed. Bone remodeling takes place in the basic multicellular unit, also known as the BMU, which comprises of the osteoclasts, the osteoblasts, and the osteocytes within the bone remodeling cavity. Osteoclasts act on the inner surfaces of bones in the marrow cavity and the spaces of the cancellous bone. To widen these cavities, they also act on the outer surfaces to reduce bony processes, such as the epiphyseal swellings at the ends of the long bones of the arm and the leg. The purpose of bone remodeling is to regulate calcium homeostasis, repair micro damage to bones from everyday stress, and to shapen the skeleton during growth. Bone growth factors affect the process of bone remodeling. There are 5 phases in the bone remodeling process: activation, resorption, reversal, formation, and quiescence. The remodeling process occurs throughout life and becomes the dominant process by the time that the bone reaches its peak mass, typically by the early 20s.
The skeletal system continued. The skeletal system is the primary body system involved in bone remodeling. There are small pits in the skeletal system named house-shaped lacunae which house osteoclasts. The primary role of the skeletal system is to provide shape and protection to the organs and body. The skeleton remodels itself in response to stresses such as damage and growth. Bone marrow is housed within the skeleton. Important to bone remodeling, osteoclasts are formed in the marrow as well as red and white blood cells. Bone remodeling activity depends on the bones involved and age of the individual. Remodeling is most prominent when the skeleton is broken or damaged, such as within a fracture. Remodeling is also impacted by strain. Osteoclasts and osteoblasts both work together to remove and replace old and damaged bone.
There are multiple different tools that are used to aid in the process of bone remodeling. One of these tools is a multinuclear celled organism that dissolves and absorbs bone. This helps the bone remodeling process by aiding in removing old and damaged bone from the patient. They originate from hematopoietic stem cells, which are cells that are isolated from the blood and bone marrow and have the ability to renew themselves. Osteoclasts differ from these cells because it possesses a macrophage stimulating colony factor. Osteoclasts are much bigger than osteoblasts, which are another organism that is used in the process of bone remodeling. During the osteoclast process, as bone is absorbed, a membrane called the ruffled border is formed. This membrane creates a larger surface area for bone absorption. Podosomes assist in holding an attachment to the bone. Podosomes are actin-rich cellular protrusions that can both help cells attach or degrade certain things. Pits found on the bone surface, called restorative pits, are where the breakdown of bone occurs. Hydrogen cations are secreted into the pit and help break down bone. Bone that is broken down in these pits is then taken away to the secretory zone, where it is redistributed around the body. When bone tissue is broken down, minerals are released, which results in the transfer of calcium from the bone tissue to the blood. Osteoclasts dissolve bone mineral by massive acid secretion and secrete specialized proteases that degrade the organic matrix. It takes approximately 14 days for this process to complete. These can also break down cartilage and replace it with spongy bone. Osteoclasts come from the bone marrow and are related to white blood cells. They are typically formed when two or more cells fuse together. Osteoclasts can become overactive and begin to produce too much bone tissue, which results in abnormal growth and enlargement. This abnormal growth means the new bone tissue is weak and unstable. It also contains more blood cells than normal bone tissue. The cause of accelerated bone growth is still somewhat unknown.
In bone remodeling, there are two cells that play a very major role. One of the cells is an osteoblast. The osteoblast is a single nucleus cuboidal cell that is given the role of synthesizing and creating the bone. This is done after the osteoclast is done dissolving and absorbing the bone. Osteoblasts also develop from mesenchymal stem cells, also known as MSCs. MSCs are multipotent stem cells found in bone marrow and are important for making and repairing skeletal tissues. The osteoblast forms the bone in two stages. The first stage is the bone matrix formation. The second stage is the mineralization of the bone matrix. In the first stage, osteoblasts secrete collagen, non-collagen proteins, and proteoglycans. Collagen is a protein found in connective tissues all over the body. Proteoglycans are filler substances found in cells in many organisms. In the bone matrix formation stage, it also forms the organic matrix or structure of the bone. In the second stage, the mineralization, two phases are involved, the vesicular phase and the fibrillar phase. In the vesicular phase, the vesicles with calcium break off from osteoblasts, and they bind to proteoglycans found inside of the bone matrix. Osteoblasts will also release alkaline phosphatase enzymes, also known as ALP enzymes, which then break down phosphine compounds which are found inside of the vesicles. Leading on to the second phase, the fibrillar phase, calcium and phosphate inside of the vesicles will form hydroxyapatite. Hydroxyapatite is a mineral that is found in tooth enamel and bones. The formation of the hydroxyapatite will saturate the vesicles, causing them to burst. The burst releases the hydroxyapatite into the body, which then mineralizes the bone matrix. Throughout this whole process, it involves a group, big or small, of osteoblasts. It does not involve only just one.
On this slide are the sources we have used to compose our project, and the links are formatted in APA style. Slide contains a link to our Nearpod presentation, which is based on the material within our slides and consists of some free response questions and some matching questions, and also a mountain activity.